So we do have the roof done, and I just got to apologize, guys, because this has not been the most instructional, detailed build series that we've done. And I feel like because a lot of it is repetitious and standard to what we've done in the past, I've got tons of build series. I really wanted to highlight the things that were unique to this large of a building and just give you guys the general, you know, scope of what we're doing. Hopefully you learned something so far on a larger scale building with the way the chains are done, the deadmen, setting the large trusses. But what we're doing now is the roof is on, and we're gonna start trying to work on these walls because this is a big building. That is a big umbrella up there. And we wanna get some structure on these walls to hold everything where it should be forever. So what I'm doing right now is cutting up lumber for our windows. Greg is also cutting up lumber to build the window boxes. And we're gonna try and get that installed so we can get house wrap on these exterior walls and start putting some steel up. So we've got 8 windows, and what I've got to do is just cut myself 8 top and bottom headers. We're not looking for an exact dimension. I just cut them at these 16s down into 8 foot, and the other side could be 8 foot 3/4, ½ inch, whatever the leftovers, because it doesn't really matter. You know, I bought this tape measure at Menards the other day. It's been about probably a month now. It's a chameleon. It looks like chameleon, but it's not the word chameleon. I don't know how you say it, camelon. It's pretty nice, man. It's got like a legit standout. I mean, that's 11 foot, no problem. Nice. Wish I had my safety glasses, but I just safety squint. Okay, so what I've done here is gone through and set all these uppers. You'll see that 2x4 right here. Those were all set to 82 inches above the floor. And that is because the opening of a door, our walk doors, is also 82 inches. So I want those to all be the same. Now what I'm gonna do is come through and set my lower quote unquote header. And that's gonna be 3 inches below, or sorry, 3 foot below this one. I leveled that, which means I'm gonna go ahead and mark 3 foot on both posts. These were the boards that I did not cut to a perfect dimension. That's because it really doesn't matter. I just got to span across from one post to the other for the support. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball my one side close, and then I'll get this side. Of course, using GRK screws here, and they're structural. And I like them because it draws all the materials tight and has good holding power. The reason we don't use them on everything, like these nail girts, is because the cost of them, it does get expensive putting those connections in place with structural screws all the time. And these 20-penny ring shank nails are perfect. Now I gotta lay out where my window location is gonna be. Let's see, we're at 12 foot center, and then I've actually gotta be 6 inches offset one way or the other. So we're actually gonna go 11 foot 6, and that is so the ribs on my steel aren't right up my window jamb, causing any issues with water. Next, I'm just gonna go ahead and make a quick center mark on my window jamb, which should be 24. 2x8 walls, 2x8 boxes, a little bit heavier than normal 2x6. Lined up with my mark. All right, what do you got?
All right, Kimo Sabe.
Wait, what'd you do with my little walk plank?
Right there.
It's good to have a partner when doing this. Makes it easier to level these out, plumb them out.
Sure.
All right.
Bro, then check this out. All right. Go for it.
It's 43 inches from the bottom of this header here to the top of this guy, and I ended up cutting them at like 42 1/4 because that gave me 0 waste.
A little bit short.
Yeah, but that don't matter.
It matters to me.
Bro, you've come up short your whole life. Is that why it bothers you so much? And then we're gonna go ahead and screw in the jambs to the face of these backer blocks. I'm gonna take my square and I'm gonna measure over from the inside of the jamb to 3.5 inches. so I can cut this center gird out. Now one might be saying, Kyle, you know if you had safety glasses, you wouldn't get sawdust in your eyes. However, that's actually not true out here where the wind's blowing. What happens is those safety glasses almost direct the sawdust right behind them and into your eyes. So I find that it doesn't actually always work. Yes, if a wood chip flies out, it's gonna protect you. Am I right? Sometimes safety glasses, it like directs.
It gives you a false hope until your eyes are open, and then when the sawdust flows around behind your glasses.
That's exactly right. It's like having a railing on a side of a stair. It makes you think you're never gonna fall off, but bro, you just gotta lean over and you're gone. Okay, so now I'm just gonna take these 36-inch boards that we cut exactly to be 36. Yeah, man.
Thanks, brother.
And we're gonna put those in, and that is what's going to finish off the window exterior face frame, give us a nice place to fasten our window, and eventually all of our trims that will also be going over the window as well. And that's a window frame. We've got 7 more to do. Next after that will be door frames. Base trim, house wrap, all that good stuff. But one thing at a time. Yeah, it looks pretty good, man. All right, we got all of our windows framed in. All the windows are here on this front side. That's because, for the most part, it's the visual side of the building where people are gonna be able to see it from the road. The windows do add natural light, but also they give the building a lot better aesthetic, in my opinion. It's just a good thing to add. A big building like this, you don't just want all walls, except for on the very back where it's in the cornfield. That's basically gonna be walls. Save the money. You could add some windows for just extra natural light. However, I'm a believer that when you get into your shop to work or whatever, any natural light is enough to see what you're doing. And if you're gonna be working, you're probably gonna turn your lights on anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. The argument to have all that natural light to work in is a bad argument. So if you're planning your shop, don't plan on having natural light so that you can work on your equipment or do projects, especially if it's a big shop like this. The natural light will die and you won't have enough to illuminate the space to work in. All right, guys, finally time to be putting up house wrap, which means we're gonna be able to get to some steel. Greg's running the house wrap ahead of me, and he's got this base trim on. I had a meeting this morning, so that was really nice to show up to the base trim done and this house wrap started. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these windows prepped. It'd be really nice to get a side of steel done. If you can just get a side a day done, then you're doing pretty good. When we install that window, we'll silicone the top and the sides. We'll leave the bottom just as it is. And then that way, if any moisture gets in that window, it can make its way out. And then we'll flap that house wrap over top, seal everything off. You know, a question that a lot of people ask me is, how the heck did you get your logo on your house wrap? I started buying this from Menards back in the day. It's a little bit more expensive, maybe 140 bucks a roll. You can buy a pallet of this and get your own logo custom printed. I think it's 44 rolls or something like that. To me, totally worth it, man, because especially when you take pictures and post your business out on social media, if you like people to see your logo, if you're gonna do it anyway, if you're gonna buy the rolls eventually anyway, even if it takes a couple of years to use them, I think it's a good investment. Kimberly-Clark will do this for you. You have to talk to them. There you go. Hopefully that helps somebody. I like these newborn caulk guns. They're super smooth. I used to just always buy the cheapest ones possible, but you start to realize that buying cheap is not always the best thing. Some things it's okay, like labor. Cheap labor, you want that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the cheaper the better.
Yep, because even if you got to go back and replace things, at least you didn't spend a ton of money to have it done in the first place. You know what I mean?
It'll get done quick because the less they cost, the more you can buy.
Well, that's right. Not only the more you can buy,
So time
but
is
your
money.
odds that cheap labor actually has skill it goes up.
Exactly.
I mean, if you spend a lot of money on one guy and he sucks, then what?
I would say like right in there, yeah.
I'm just trying to hit the hole, as you always should. Okay, so when I come back here, I'll go ahead and cut that off, tape it, and we'll be good to put our J channels on. You just got this wainscot set up on our pallet. We're gonna punch this. We always pre-punch our steel. That way our screw lines are not only good and uniform, but also it makes our job a lot easier. When we put the steel on the wall, we don't have to search or mark every sheet. This will do it all for us. But what I wanted to share with you guys is maybe some of you have noticed, maybe some of you have not, since we've done the roof, we're using a different steel. So typically we use a metal sail steel, good stuff, but what they don't have is a 1 foot on center profile like this. And we're attaching this building to an existing building that has a 1 foot on center profile. What that means for those of you that might not know is that each center of rib is on a 1 foot spacing. Now, almost all sheet steel like this is going to be 3 foot coverage. And depending on what your rib spacing is, a lot of times that affects your layout of your windows, your doors, so that you can have proper flashing and you don't get water issues because water runs into a rib and comes down. But this makes it easy because every rib is centered at 1 foot. So when we laid out our windows behind us, we laid out the center of the windows in the center of a flat, which means 2 foot over, our window edge will be in the center of a flat. Very easy to do that math. Also, when we lay out our steel, we don't have to worry about where the rib is going to end up on a corner because our buildings are all even footage. 120 foot long, 40 sheets of steel, exactly rib to rib, end to end. Very nice, very nice. This is also a 26 gauge steel. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. Usually we use a 29 gauge steel. So this is going to be a very strong wall. It doesn't always mean if you go to a thicker gauge steel, it's a stronger building. But in this case, the way we've framed it is the same as with the 29 gauge steel. We're using this 26 gauge steel. And when we did that roof, we definitely noticed a difference walking on it, just how strong and secure this metal felt. So I'm pretty excited to use it. I've been wanting to get a 1 foot on center profile. This came from JMac Metals. They're in Galva, Illinois. If you're looking for something and you're around the area, look up Adam, fellow pole vaulter. So good guy. And so far we're liking the metal. So we're gonna get this marked out and start installing it. So when I'm laying out this steel, what I'm gonna do, because we have an even footage building, exactly divisible by 3 foot, I'm gonna go ahead and get my first edge set. Now, this steel is a 36-inch coverage, but when you measure the center of the good lap rib to the edge of the siphon leg, it's 38 inches. So I'm gonna mark 38 inches. That is where the edge of my first piece is gonna go. So now that I have this first one set, I will say it's gonna be much easier for me to come off this bottom. So I'm gonna set a nail right off to the side of my line, and I've got a 100 foot tape. So now I'm just gonna come through and mark every 36 inches from that edge. Now, you very well may be asking yourself, Kyle, why didn't you just, instead of bending over, why didn't you put your nail here and measure out? 2 reasons. 1, because when I'm running at a long distance, this tape measure is gonna sag and it's gonna throw off my measurements. So by running in the bottom, it actually sets on that base trim and giving me a more accurate dimension versus having to yank on this tape measure to get it to go straight. Also, now that I've got my marks on the bottom, when I take my level here, I can set it on the base trim and very easily come back and forth. And look at this, this arrow's telling me I'm out of level that way. The top is to the left, the bottom is to the right, and boom. I mean, we don't need exactly perfect, but it's pretty darn easy to be perfect. Okay, so now that we're gonna install this steel, I'm gonna set it down on my base trim, and that first line, I didn't make this one square, I'll have to do that. I'm gonna find my bottom line right here, make sure that I'm right on it, and screw it in. I'm gonna come over here to this side and put that screw in. Now, I didn't make a line here, but luckily I can see that. And that is what we're gonna always go off of. So, you know, a lot of guys ask me, hey man, how do you make sure that as you go down a wall that your steel stays where you want it, or that you end with the right rib location on your end? You should always be hitting a mark. So you can see this next mark right here. I'm gonna set it over top of my last sheet, and then I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna make sure, even if it doesn't hit it exactly, I'm gonna make it hit it. So I'm gonna move this sheet just ever so slightly. I'm gonna put that screw in on the leading siphon. I'm gonna make sure that my lap is good. Okay, then I'm gonna come back up to my top. You'll notice I might be a 1/16 of an inch off or something. I don't care. I'm gonna move this steel right where it's on the edge. And then I'm gonna put that screw in there, and then I'm gonna come back, make sure that this lap is good right here. And that is how I will do every piece. I'm not gonna hit these middle screws right now. We'll come back and do that after we've laid all these sheets out. You know, the other thing about 1 foot on center steel profiles, Greg and I really loved it on the roof, is that there's less ribs to screw on. Now, this particular thing that we're doing right now, the wainscot, we're screwing top and bottom. Both top and bottom gets 2 screws, 1 on each side of the rib, but through the middle, it just gets 1 on the side of the rib, which means you use a lot less screws, which means also that it takes a lot less time to screw off a roof or a wall. And specifically that roof, when we had 20-some, I think we had 21 purlin rows, which meant 21 rows of screws. You do the math, every sheet, every row, 1 less screw. So every sheet in theory has 20 less screws. That adds up across a 42 foot or a 42 sheet roof. That's 800 screws. So times that by 2 sides, 1,600 screws. 250 screws in a bag, 30 bucks a bag. Oh geez, now I'm really having to do math. Let's see, 250, that's 4, let's just say about 7 bags, 6 bags you're saving. So not only are you saving labor, but you just saved, you know, maybe roughly $200 on screws. I don't know if I just did all that math correctly, Greg, but it seemed right.
Hey, you just throw out numbers, and you say it's right, people believe you.
So I just seen this on YouTube, it's gotta be true. A silly little fact about Kyle that you might not have known, I was a valedictorian of my class, just like Greg. Greg was also the valedictorian of his class. Greg was homeschooled, so he was the only one in his class. That joke would have been a lot more fun if he was here. Sorry, Greg. But that is no joke. I was valedictorian of my class. I didn't go to a big school, but I did have a perfect GPA. I really loved mathematics, science, and I think just in general, critical thinking. I enjoyed that sort of thing, so I think that's what draws me to working with my hands, building things, solving problems. They're all those sorts of, I guess, daily challenges, you know. Because we did our job correctly, what you'll notice is the center of this rib is right on the edge of the building, because that is the even foot mark that we laid it out to. So that's a good tall tale sign that we're running pretty good here. And the important thing about having this rib in the corner is that when our corner trim goes on there, any wind-driven rain that tries to get behind our trims is gonna hit this and go down and out over our trims. So now that we got this all done, time to screw it off, I guess. So when I'm putting the screw in here, I'm just gonna go till I see the steel get tight to the washer, and this little neoprene gasket in here is gonna just tighten up. All right, so one of the things that I always check, especially on these vinyl windows, is these corners. Because the vinyl comes out of a mold, I'm assuming, I mean, I kind of assume that's what happens. I've never been to a vinyl window manufacturer's plant. They leave these little pieces and chunks in the corners sometimes. So I always try to kind of cut them back, make sure the corners are as nice and tight as possible. That's one plus to using like an aluminum window, is the corners are always very nice and tight. This is just 100% silicone on this bottom flange. Now, when we set the window, we don't have any caulk or sealant underneath this bottom flange, so that if water gets in the window, it can work its way out. What this is doing is gonna prevent any water from coming down the face of the window and going and getting behind our steel. I'm not a fan of caulking this, and these little weep holes don't leave you much room for that. So this is our way of combating any moisture getting in behind our steel right here. Same sort of thing. I'm gonna run a bead of silicone down the edge of this window, once again, just to prevent any water from wicking in around the trims. And then I'm gonna tuck this right into this slot I opened. And then this is gonna fit inside of that hem that I just opened up with my knife. Just kind of a gentle tap, make sure it's nice and tight. And then I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, then once I've got that done, I always cut these a little bit long. That way I can trim them to be perfect right where I want them. And in doing this right here, it also kind of pinches that trim back together, hoping to keep this a nice and tight detail right there. So those 3 pieces of trim is all I'm gonna do for now. I will now go ahead and tape off this top here. And this last piece of trim isn't gonna go on until we put our steel on the wall. This has been the best way that I've found to trim windows. Some people will use a built-in J channel on the window. Not a fan. It would be very hard to not only install the steel with that top J channel on, but also, I think, give yourself as good of a chance of having a good looking leak-proof window. We're ready to start putting our upper steel on. We're gonna bring the steel over, get it marked, punched. We'll be ready to go. Definitely 26 gauge is heavier though, dude.
You got it.
There's a little bit of breeze. I gotta be straight with you, I messed up this dimension of the steel. I got it at 15 1/4 because when I did my math, I did it like I always do. However, these trims that we're using on this job are a little bit bigger, taller. The base trim is not an inch. It's an inch and a 1/16, an 1/8. Our F&J, our trim up at the top that our soffit goes into, that's a little bit bigger. So when I deducted the measurements necessary to figure out what this length of steel was, I was a full 1/4 inch off about. Huh?
About 1/4 inch tight. Too tight.
Too tight. Okay, 1 second. Okay, you got it?
However, I don't have this board. All you.
It's good. Man, it really is unfortunate that we got to cut every one of these down.